The Detroit Lions just got a massive boost. We're going to talk about that as well. We got to jump into the offensive coordinator's role and what that looks like for the Lions moving forward, and a ton of other stuff to talk about it. So don't miss out. Let's dive in. My name is Aaron on the daily NFC North content, part of the NFC North Guys. Don't miss out. All you got to do is subscribe, hit the notification bell, and hey, do me a favor, wherever the heck it is, find that thumbs up, that like button. It'd mean the world to me. First and foremost, massive boost for the Detroit Lions, and that is this. We already saw the schedule release. It's looking nice. A lot of good opponents based on this year. But looking at the metrics, it is the 6th easiest schedule going into 2026-2027. And you might say, Aaron, to be the best, you have to beat the best. Yeah. And this year we had a tough schedule. And unfortunately, there's some glaring issues that the Lions need to talk about and fix, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But again, going into a season knowing that your schedule should be easier should give you optimism and should give you some more motivation, knowing, hey, listen, there shouldn't have been any excuse this year, but going into this with Dan Campbell chip on his shoulder, organization chip on their shoulder, trying to prove people wrong, prove people wrong. Everyone's saying, look, it's the Bears division now. And I don't know, there's probably Bears fans watching this. That's fine. But again, I was at that. They swept the Bears this year. The Bears don't necessarily scare me. Ben Johnson doesn't scare me. What should scare other people is this Detroit Lions and the rampage they have the potential to go on, fixing things, and especially on a schedule like this. So comment below, do you feel optimistic? What are your thoughts? Would love to hear from you. Next up, we got to jump into this whole coordinator shindig. You know, a lot of people coming out and saying, listen, Mike McDaniel, he's the guy. He's going to save us. He's going to be the savior. What we need to understand, if we look at the metrics offensively, Morton obviously wasn't great. But one of the biggest issues for this offense for the Lions, I don't think was Dan Campbell either. I think Dan Campbell did an admirable job calling the offense. I really do. And yes, you look at the historic 2024 season and compare it to this season, the Lions were still one of the top defenses in the league or offenses in the league. But yes, they had less total yards. Yes, they had less touchdowns from the year before. All these different metrics. And one of the biggest glaring metrics was the offensive line. Before we jump into that, all I want to say is this. Before we say, man, yeah, this is going to be it. I don't think so. Again, I think Dan Campbell did a great job making some calls. Again, there were some calls I was like, But again, that's any offensive coordinator. But I think a lot of people have reverted to Ben Johnson as some sort of, he was the savior, he was the guy, he was the glue. Again, I don't necessarily think that was true. I loved him as offensive coordinator. Yes, he's great at play calling. Yes. But Dan Campbell did a great job too when he took over. Morton, no, different story. But one of the biggest issues for this offense was this offensive line. You look at any metric, rushing yards down significantly. When it came to run blocking yards, and you look at those metrics, the year before, the Lions ranked in number one in the league. This year, they dropped all the way to 22. It was rough. You lost a lot of big-time veterans that were huge anchors in that interior offensive line. You bring in Ratledge, and then obviously Mahogany, and it just did not go well. So I think one thing before we start jumping into this whole offensive coordinator thing is this. We need to stop saying this guy's going to be the savior. No, what's going to fix this team is fixing the offensive line and truly getting a solid pressure on the defensive side of the ball. It can't just be Aiden Hutchinson. It needs to be more. And you better believe that Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes, and this organization is going to fix that. We've talked about that before, and we'll continue to talk about that as we get into free agency, as we get into the draft, and all these different things. But to come out and say that once this is fixed, and if McDaniel comes, he will be the savior. I don't buy that necessarily. though I do like Mike McDaniel, and I wouldn't mind them hiring him. I'm not saying I don't want him to hire him, but I think standing on a soapbox and saying that, the glaring issue, was Dan Campbell, I don't think it was. And I also don't think that, I think if Ben Johnson was the offensive coordinator, do we really believe? Now, granted, I think earlier in the season when Morton was making the calls, I think we would have looked a lot better, yes. And I truly believe if Dan Campbell was calling the plays all season, we would very well, in my eyes, be in the playoffs. And I know you might be saying, well, we're playing hypotheticals now. But I truly believe that over Morton. There's a reason he's gone. See you later. But as we jump into this, I think we just need to understand that the biggest issue on this offense was the offensive line, was Morton calling plays. I don't think it was Dan Campbell. So comment below, what are your thoughts on that? But again, as we look at suitors, yes, we understand Mike McDaniel is coming to interview, which is great. And I actually, of all the people, I like him the most. And the reason being is because, again, you look at the weapons he had at Miami, which kind of kills you, but he's had an issue with injuries. Tua Tagovailoa, injured all the time. Tyreek Hill got hurt. Again, it stinks for him. It really, it just, that team got dealt a rough hand. But when they were at their peak, they were great and they were a playoff team. And so I don't mind that, especially with the weapons that the Lions have. I think he could have a field day with them. I truly do. And I do think he is an offensive guru. I do not mind that. You look at Scotty Montgomery. I think that's also interesting. He's a guy who's familiar. I don't mind that. Again, I like McDaniel over him. McDaniel over him. David Blau, obviously that's a solid hire by the Commanders. Kind of bummed we missed out on that. We'll see. Cliff Kingsbury, do not want to touch with. I really don't want him on the Lions. I don't. Again, you look at all of his successful offenses, and who are they with? Dual threat quarterbacks. Jared Goff is not a dual threat quarterback. He figured it out with Jaden Daniels. They had a great year last year, and then it was Kerplunk this year. I'm not a huge fan. It'll be interesting to see where he lands, but I don't think that's the way the Lions should go with this hire. Brian Daboll, I don't know. I'm not opposed to it. The man, finally gets a quarterback, gets some pieces, and then it's like, peace out. That's what's tough about the NFL. Look at John Harbaugh. Golly. But of all these guys that we're looking at, I think the one that is the most kind of, hey, sounds good. I would agree is an A+ hire. Obviously, being a former coach and brings a lot of value is Mike McDaniel. I would tell you the one thing that makes me most nervous about him is him coming in and, again, he does well. Say he helps helps the Lions get a Super Bowl, then peace out. He's gone, which is understandable. You were like, we literally just lost both coordinators. Yes, I understand that. So things happen. Those things happen. I would take that. I retract my words. I would bring in him, and then we win the Super Bowl. Shoot, he could leave in a year. I don't care. But the biggest thing we need to do to help put whoever this offensive coordinator coming in next is fix this offensive line, as well as defensively get pressure, dial up pressure more, get some elite or younger guys that really can come in and wreak havoc. So comment below, tell me what you think. Mike McDaniel, maybe you want Cliff Kingsbury. Who do you want? Comment below, would love to hear from you. What are your thoughts? Lions fans, you guys rock. I love you. We'll talk later. Peace.